back, ladies and gents. Digital transformation is the expression that media executives are now embracing across the world. Technological advances have rapidly changed everything from how content is created to how it's delivered. So what does this mean for the future of news and information and for those who work in it? We'll explore that as we look at Media and Technology 2021 Trends. And our moderator, based in France, is the business editor for Euronews. Please give a warm welcome to Sasha Vakulina and her panel.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you. It is great to be here. This is the day 3. I'm super excited about this session, and I think I've read tons of information trying to prep for it. Of course, the topic of our session on the media and technologies and the trends of 2021 is something that is very close to my news junkie heart, and I hope we're going to have a great conversation here with our speakers. And without further ado, it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce them to you. So here with us we have Andrew Kiện. He's a writer, director, digital revolution expert in Silicon Valley in the US. Great having you here. Joining us online, we have Ben Hammersley, technologist, strategic forecasting consultant, USA Online. Hello.
Good morning.
With us here on stage, we have Timur Bekmambetov, producer, director, well, it's Russia and the US. Please welcome Alina Kim. She's a TikTok star, YOLO House from Kazakhstan. Alex Volcic, managing director of Crawl for Russia and this region. And Nikita Magutin, editor-in-chief and co-founder of the Buzzer publication, founder of the Mesh project in Russia. It's great to have you all here. Well, this year, of course, as you all know, as you've been following all the sessions in the event, the format is a hybrid one, which means we do have the audience here, we do have the speakers here, and online, of course, Ben's here, but also we've got the great audience online, and we're going to be getting all the comments and questions from them as well. We're going to get that during the session towards the end of it. This will last around 90 minutes, and I'm very much encouraging all of you here on stage, here in the room with us, and everybody online to join in. Please do reach out. We're looking forward to getting your comments, your questions, and everything that you want to say or ask when it comes to the media and the trends for 2021. Well, actually, it's not just for 2021, right? It's also for all those years ahead. Because definitely what happened over the past year and the year and a half changed the rules of the game in almost every sense. We're talking media, we're talking news, we're talking social media, we're talking in general content. And according to the Reuters Institute survey, that's the recent one, over 70% of media industry executives say that the pandemic has accelerated their plans for digital transformation. But this trend is something that has started even before the pandemic, right? So this only accelerated expectedly so. Now, I want to start with a question on, before we go to the current trends and the future trends, let me do this. I want to ask all of you, all the speakers, and Andrew, let's start with you, please. Over this year and a half, when we have all been living through extraordinary times, what do you think are those biggest changes, apart from accelerating the digitalization of the media that you've seen and the changes that only were brought there because of the pandemic? What changed the most?
Oh, you can hear me, right? Well, I actually would take exception to the idea of these being exceptional times. I think they're fairly unexceptional. Yesterday I visited one of the Soviet gulags outside this city, and the 1930s, or the late 1930s in the old Soviet Union, those were exceptional times. I don't think COVID has changed very much. I think that we all have fairly short memory spans. And in a year or two, this whole thing will be forgotten. I mean, obviously, if you've died, I guess you're not going to know if you're dead. But if you lose someone, then that's bad, obviously. I'm not belittling that. But I would take exception to the idea of us living through exceptional times. We live in a time when everyone thinks they're perennially living through exceptional times. and they're usually wrong.
So you don't really think that what happened over the year and a half, what we all lived through when it comes to the media and content making, because ultimately, no matter whether we're talking traditional media, no matter we're talking social media, it's about the content making.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we all spend a lot of time online. I would say the biggest consequence of spending so much time online over the last 18 months is we've all been longing for the physical. I always predicted that the real value in 21st century media would be in the analog, in the physical, in events like this. Nobody really wants to spend time on Zoom. No one wants to. I mean, Ben, unfortunately, is in London. We'll ask him, but he's missing out. So, if anything, I think what the pandemic has done is simply underlined and reiterated the value of the physical, the value of the analog, the idea in terms, say, for example, of people meeting one another, that nothing replicates looking them in the eye, nothing replicates being able to shake someone's hand. So, whilst COVID, I guess, exaggerated and compounded and accelerated some of the disruptive natures of the digital revolution, I don't think it's changed anything. And as I said, because we live in this age of instant media where everything's exaggerated and then every single story gets so dramatized that we assume it's the first time in human history it's ever happened. We've had many plagues before, many worse plagues than COVID. It's not good, and it certainly has left an impact, but I just don't buy the idea that we're living in exceptional times.
Well, thank you. Ben, you are joining us online. Do you buy that idea? What's your take on that? Because with what you do, you've got to, you know, with your work for years, you've been looking at the future trends to come, and you're trying to forecast and foresee them. So what's your take on that? Do you buy that idea? And were you able to foresee this one?
Wish. In general, yes. Obviously, we've been talking about pandemics and the collapse of supply chains and all of those sorts of things for many years, but we've never had a date for it. And it's and whilst yes, I think Andrew's right in that we have lived through pandemics before as the human race. The we in that sentence is doing a lot of work. I mean, we haven't. You and I haven't. No one else listening to this hasn't before. The last pandemic was 100 years ago. So it's not unique in the realms of human history, but is unique in the realms of our own personal experiences, and that has to mean something. But I think I do agree that there is an overemphasis on how much change has happened in some respects. When we talk about digital transformation in the media, I think that we have to separate the transformation of the audience, the digital transformation of the way that we were receiving news or receiving media, which hasn't really changed very much over the past 2 years, and the digital transformation that has had to have happened within the media industry itself, within industries. The production of media, the production of news, the way that we actually do it, the fact that I'm connecting to you here from New York and we're doing everything over Zoom is something that was very rare 2 years ago and is now perfectly normal. But that's not about how people consume things so much as how people produce it, and that I think has changed something. One major change, though, that is not just because of COVID, but because of the years that preceded it as well, has been the emphasis that people have started to place on the content of the news and the content of their media. And specifically, I think if there is one thing that has changed, it has been the realization of many, many more people in the world that the news that their fellow citizens are consuming is just wrong. It's just misleading. It's misinformation. It's propaganda. It's conspiracy theories. It's just wrong. And because of the direct effects on people's health, that misinformation has been increasingly shown to be extraordinarily harmful in a way that, say, political misinformation was ignored or just discounted because people aren't as politically engaged as they are engaged with the task of not dying on a daily basis. And so our relationship with the truth, I think, has changed more than perhaps the way that we receive our news, which has been online for more than 20 years now. We seem to have been having the digitization of news conversation for most of my career.
Thanks for that. We're gonna touch upon the we're getting there. We're gonna touch upon the misinformation a little later. Yeah, go, Nikita.
Мне есть что добавить по этому вопросу.
I have something to add to this question because I disagree with the previous speakers. I believe that the mass media has actually taken a very convenient position, saying that we've been doing that for 20 years and nothing's changed. But I think a lot has changed. And I would mention that there are two parts of these changes. On the one side, we have the content consumers, and on the other hand, the content producers. And the regular people, just consumers of the content, our regular people, regular audience, have changed their consciousness tremendously. There is now a demand for new types of digital content. What are specifically these changes? Let me get to that. I would probably compare that to, glass and the water dripping into that glass drop by drop. And I think that it happened gradually. So there were drops going one after another. And then the pandemic, this time X, when suddenly everyone was on lockdown at home in front of their computers, this was the last drop that overfilled this cup, and people now got a lot of time to monitor things. People now have a lot of interest to special projects. For instance, we have realized that special projects that we are doing in some interesting formats, if we are doing some new content, some augmented reality content, people started getting interested in that more and more. But basically, it's the same audience, but the time spent with these different formats has changed. That's the first thing. Second thing, the mass media doesn't want to change. They still think that they can feed people with the same types of news that they've been doing for the last 20 years. They keep thinking that we'll just get them the news. But I think it's a path towards destruction and losing popularity. I could mention a key change that I have noticed, maybe among the first ones. This trend continues for a while now, but during the pandemic, it became stronger. Regular people are tired of faceless brands. People no longer need brands that don't have a human face. People want to follow other people. Like the previous speaker mentioned, this need for physical contact. And this physical content, a person-to-person contact, actually was replaced by a contact with the person on the screen. Like we have a participants on the screen right now, and it is as if the person is with us. We don't need his body, we need his mind, and his mind is with us, and he is able to tell us his thoughts. So it's enough. And the biggest change that we came up with during the pandemic is that all of our largest publications, all of our investigations went to YouTube format, and we were able to present people on the screen. Myself and Anatoly, the authors in Baza edition, we started promoting our faces in the videos, and we noticed that those videos where we have real people, real faces and thoughts actually are more popular than faceless
To agree upon, as somebody who's been in the news industry for decades, that surely the trend these days, when it comes to the news media, specifically news, there is really demand for more personalization and for seeing more faces. But also, I do believe that there is a big change when it comes to the idea of storytelling. Timur, what's your take on that? Because, of course, with your pioneering the screen live storytelling and technology formats, this is something that you're doing it in your area, and I think we're all somehow, you know, adjusting and changing and doing the different storytelling these days.
Sorry, I will try in Russian.
Right, I agree actually with Nikita 100%. Lately, for the last, I think, 20 years, we've been living in two realities at the same time. We are living in the physical world, like our ancestors did for millennia, but we are also living in a digital world, more and more so. My phone now shows me that I spend about 8 hours a day on the social media, on the messengers, and it's quite obvious that the events in my digital life are becoming more and more important than what's happening in the physical world. I can state my love in the digital world. I can start conflicts and fights with people. I can save someone, or I can become the reason of the cause of the problem for other people. My actions in the digital world become even more important for myself and the outside world as well. And this trend is growing. Before the pandemic, well, I should say that at some point we've just came to a tipping point, and now it became obvious to everyone. But then the question is, who are we in the digital world? Are we the same people as we were in the past? Are you saying that we became more ready for the changes? Yes, we are ready for these changes, but we also need to think about what needs to happen to us so that we are not trying to, sit on both chairs, and we see that the digital world starts to change the physical world. And the problem that we have noticed when we started creating our movies in 2012, we started creating the movies where we are recording the screens of our characters, and that becomes the basis of the storytelling. And we started noticing that in the physical world, we are now lacking many important principles. In the digital world, we don't have this life and death concepts, because the person might die, but in digital world, their accounts will still continue. People don't think much about patriotism, about homeland, because it's a one global world. They don't have this concept of a family. Like even the mailbox, there will be one physical mailbox for the family, whereas the parents and the children will have completely different emails. Parents will know less about what their children are doing. They have troubles about raising their children, because whereas in the past, the children were playing in the yard and the parents were monitoring that, now they don't see what they're doing. And these changes are happening very quickly. The technologies are developing so quickly that we don't have enough time to humanize this environment that we are living in. It follows its own laws, and it's like this old world, lawless world. And historically speaking, we became a civilization because we agreed. All people at some point in the past agreed on some important things. And today we are witnessing this process when we are trying to formulate the rules on how to humanize this digital world. And the last thing I wanted to say, that's probably the main reason why I came here. I think that the only way to make a digital world more humane is to tell stories. Our physical world was mastered, and we sensed our physical world because we were telling fairy tales to our children, because there were religious books and texts, because we created narratives that touched us many people were moved and touched by certain texts, and then people accepted certain things as truth, and they made agreements, and after that came the laws, the regulation, the prisons, after people reached certain consensus. And right now, I think we are experiencing this process. We are trying to tell stories about the way we live in this digital world so that we can come up with some rules of the game and coexistence. But these changes are happening very quickly, so we need to accelerate that, right? I'm pretty sure that we can do that. I'm pretty sure that unless we tell enough stories in the next 3-5 years, if we cannot create a new Romeo and Juliet or Hamlet in the digital world, if we cannot come up with fairy tales for the digital world, then we will get a generation that was brought up in the lawless world with no values, and that will spill out to the physical world, and we don't know how they will behave and what's going to happen to them. Let's talk about this new generation.
Is fascinating and it's different, and here with us we have Alina Kim. She's a TikTok superstar. Alina, correct me if I'm mistaken, 28 million followers. 20 button. Well, I checked a few days ago, it was 28.
Уже 30 миллионов.
30 already. So see, that's progress. A couple of days ago it was 28, now 30. So as far as I understand, you became most popular in 2020. There was the biggest growth. How did it happen, and what's the situation now? Because I checked a couple of days ago, it was 27 million, 28 million, and now you're saying 30 million.
In 2020, I launched my own project. I called it Yellow House. And I apologize, I'm feeling a bit nervous. We all are. So I began to shoot in 2020. I created Yellow House. This is a group of artistic people, my contemporaries. We live together, everyone having an individual room. We are co-thinkers. We have a common target. We shoot videos, and we are not driven to increase the number of our constituents. This is not our primal factor of motivation. Now tell us about, in regards to the importance to have a team of co-thinkers, because TikTok is a big thing. It's ahead of other social media, particularly in the last year, so we want to know. Of course, it's not a brand new phenomenon. This is 2021 now, and TikTok is at its most popular now. Yes, you are right. This is the trendiest platform. A lot of people are reswitching to TikTok. Recently, we have adult constituency on the TikTok. When you say adult, what age bandwidth are you talking about? My mom is there, actually. Well, that's self-explanatory. So, what, in your opinion, causes the expansion of that constituency? What do you think? Why do you think adults are joining TikTok in the last year and a half? What is the secret of popularity in TikTok? Why do people from other age categories, people with totally different interests, come joining TikTok? Well, this is something new. Can I help the lady, please? My opinion is because of the unique algorithm of promotion of your content on the TikTok that does not you allow to live feeling comfortable at the level you already have reached. It keeps kicking you in the back all the time. Every day you are supposed to shoot out and promote something. A very tricky algorithm. It motivates you to live every new day as a new one. Yes, it is a tricky algorithm, but tricky algorithms are in other social networks. So as a user, as a consuming entity, well, my opinion is the main TikTok factor of success is that it idealistically went along with the clip thinking of the modern generation. Clip thinking, mosaic thinking, when small inferior particles of bright emotions, abrupt and fastly switching from event to another event. Pay attention to how TikTok operates. I might be mistaken. In average, per day, a TikTok user, not the one who lives there, views approximately 70 video clips, and I do not think that any of existing platforms has this kind of frequency. Why? Because the duration of a video is 15 seconds only. So the process of making decision whether to watch the video or not takes a second and a half to the maximum. You switch it on, and this is it. When does your brain manage to understand whether it is interesting or not? So the mastery of people who operate in TikTok is not to only live in one house. It's not about teamwork, but it's to draw people's attention in a matter of the first second, create proper impression in a matter of 1 second, and doing it on day-to-day basis, remaining topical in the eyes of your audience from second to second. And there's another nuance I wanted to talk about, a very illustrative situation confirming the words of Timur about duality of our present existence. We got life in the cyberspace, we got physical real life. Take a look at this lady, 30 million followers. She is a superstar. She is acting quite moderately and modestly. The anchor asked a question, do you consider yourself a celebrity? And her reaction was very modest, very reserved. That is cute, but at the same time, I didn't see on the TikTok, I saw something totally different. A person who operates openly in the cyberspace, and now this celebrity has been dragged out from her habitat, and she is not feeling comfortable in the real world, in the physical world. Arina, please.
Also about TikTok is the fact that lots of classical, traditional, so to say, news medias are actually getting much bigger numbers on TikTok than they are on their linear broadcast. And we are talking about classical news, and we've seen some of the moves previously, a couple of years ago. It was before big TikTok popularity. Big news media organizations entered Snapchat with specific formats. Now, big traditional news organizations are going TikTok, and their numbers there are much better there. Alex.
I mean, I'm in awe that I'm sitting next to someone who has 30 million subscribers. And I think she's very krutaya, she's very cool. But there are real, I want to talk about the other side of the medal here, which I think this pandemic has only exacerbated, but there was a trend that was in place even before the pandemic, which is the rise of disinformation and fake news because of this new media. I have teenage kids. My daughter's 13. She wanted to have, and she's half American, it's not her fault, she wanted to have a conversation about Black Lives Matter on the basis of information she found on TikTok. And clearly, it was very difficult for me to explain that Black Lives Matter is an important subject, but let's read about it in more traditional forums and more traditional sources of information, and then we can talk about Black Lives Matter. And that was an interesting conversation because at the end, we talked about types of media and checking your sources rather than about TikTok. And so as a business, as a consulting business, we help clients with the effects of disinformation a lot. So nowadays you can you can speak or write about anybody you want, and there's no editor checking your content. You can write, you can do a clip about me on TikTok saying horrible things. I mean, nobody would be interested in me, but as an example.
Well, you can say horrible things anywhere.
But in a...
Except when it comes to traditional TV or so.
As you know, I come from a very old journalistic family. My father is a very famous Italian news anchor. Before you could go on TV or write a piece about anybody, about anything, there would be 2 or 3 layers of pravierka, of scrutiny. As you know, you have an editor. I mean, you're super important, but somebody will check your work. And if things get contentious, then the legal department gets involved and says, oh, I'm not quite sure we can publish this.
It's a matter of responsibility afterwards as well.
Absolutely. And if you get it wrong, you either publish a correction or, I mean, there are consequences. These consequences are completely gone today, and so disinformation, and so we are now in an era where disinformation and fake news can run free. And I think this pandemic has only made it worse. I agree with the first speaker who said that, things haven't changed. It's not that fake news, disinformation is a new thing, but now we all spend so much time on new media that it's become exacerbated.
No, for sure, but also when it comes to misinformation and fake news, this, of course, the situation sort of got worse during the pandemic, but it's not because it's only on social media or new platforms like TikTok, for example, the absence of responsibility compared to traditional media. I do, of course, understand that when you work in the classical news organization, you do have editors, you do have fact-checking situation, you do have afterwards the legal and to carry on the responsibility. But then at the same time, to get nowadays, with the pandemic and even before the pandemic, the world had been changing so much at the same time. That's what I wanted. The world had been changing so much already before the pandemic that, to get the bigger and the fuller picture of every situation, you've got to check everything. You've got to go on all the sources. You're going to go traditional facts, fact-checking. Then you check all the social media. Then you go on TikTok. I go on TikTok preparing for my work.
Right, but you're talking about something that you do as a traditional journalist.
Well, yeah, it's just like I've got more things to do now, let's put it this way.
Right, I mean, you triangulate your information, and you need to see everything that's out there.
Old school a bit, yeah.
Yeah?
I'm a bit old school. We do have a question from the audience. Please keep them coming. We're gonna go there in a second.
Yes.
Yeah? Yes. Please, Andrew.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Let me just observe one thing here. I think that one of the things that digital has done is turned numbers into theology. We're all obsessed with numbers. I mean, we always, of course, we all want to be big in one way or the other. But we're so obsessed with numbers that most of us don't critically look behind these numbers. So, for example, I'm not knowledgeable about what this young lady does on TikTok, so I want to premise what I'm going to say with that. But all you've said about her is this theology of numbers. You've said, oh, she has 28 million followers. Oh, she only had 27 yesterday and 26 the day before, and today she has 30 million. Who cares? To me, that's neither here nor there. Whether she has 3, 10 or 30 million followers, the interesting conversation, particularly in terms of media, is she generating revenue? How is she doing it? How is she sharing that revenue? And what's TikTok's role here? Are they like Facebook? Are they a core player in what Shoshana Zuboff correctly calls the age of surveillance capitalism? Is TikTok somehow enabling more and more surveillance of its users? So I would be curious as to this young lady. How does she make her money? What's she trying to do? And does she care about the numbers? Because the easy come, easy go. Half of all these social media stars, the same was true on YouTube for years. None of this conversation is new. These people rise and fall in meteoric terms. They're like fireworks. They go up in the sky, they explode, and 3 seconds later they're instantly forgotten. So for me, the interesting question about TikTok and her as a performer, as a media player, is how she makes money, and secondly, how does she intend to genuinely build a long-term brand? Because anyone can become famous for this Warholian 3 or 5 seconds, but the really difficult thing is maintaining that fame.
Well, we're not going to be counting Alina's revenue for sure here, not on my watch.
But I'm curious.
No, I get it.
I don't want to know how much she's making, but I am interested. How's she making money? Is
well,
this
this
a professional
is why I also
endeavor?
said the dynamics of the followers increased that changed so dramatically just over the past 3 to 4 days. And this is the fact that you get from A to B within 3 days for Alina's followers. This is when it comes to the revenues and so on. Timur.
Yes, I absolutely agree that the quantity and quality is two different values, and it's not only about money, because we're saying followers, which means following, and following where, and what's a, it's a big question. What's a
It's a big question. What is the sense behind those relationships between the author and his constituency, his audience, or her audience? Quantity does matter, but the quality of relationships is far more important. Is it love? Is it interest? Is it curiosity? Or some other things that are relevant in those relationships. As to the pandemic itself and the growth of various fake news, false news, fake information, nobody knows. Maybe pandemic itself is the result of disinformation of the planet. Nikita, we have a question from the auditorium. Well, to the first speaker, I have a small observation. He asked a question, quite a rhetoric question. Why Alina? Am I being correct? Alina, what makes her a hero? What's so complicated about her work? So the speaker, how many subscribers and followers do you have? I think dramatically lower. She works with the big audience. She has her own constituency, multi-million constituency. You operate at the edge of relationships. Do you have this kind of experience? And judging from his speech, no, he doesn't. Now I want to talk about friendship on the TikTok. You wake up in the morning and you know how your day will be like. You go to bed, you know what's going to happen tomorrow. You will be shooting every goddamn day. You will have to generate fresh thoughts. You will be writing new scripts, agreeing about collaboration. This is your full-fledged conveyor activity. That generates another important moment. The old generation that in the principle does not see and does not recognize the value of the new technology, that generation sees no sense in TikTok. If to talk to my grandfather, Second World War veteran, if you ask him who a hero is, he would say that's a guy with a grenade against a tank. So for my grandfather, there are no heroes in the cyberspace, but here in cyberspace, we got a person who has 30 million followers. The person is exposing herself to communication with those people. That is tremendous, colossal work burden. If you do not realize that, it is pretty much possible that you root out from a totally different universe. You know, there is Marvel universe, and there is an old Soviet obsolete cartoon universe. You see, I just dislike the way you were discussing the lady, Mr. Keel. Now let's talk about some nuances. What is the sense behind it and how it is physically happening? As a person who has interacted with the big masses of audiences, not as an author, but as a physical person, the thing is, you manage your audience unless you do not have a big constituency. You run the content you like. Eventually you become the hostage, the slave of your own audience, and you're imposed to do things they want you to. If you trial some other formats, they don't go with the preferences of your audience. They require from you the repetition of habitual actions. We want to love you the way we loved you yesterday. Please do the same. That is why the skill to develop when you have a great constituency, that is the core of the talent, and that talent is shown only by the younger generation. They're more gifted, they're more flexible. Take a look at TikTok accounts maintained by adults, by aging people. They're just copying and pasting, they're just trying to look teenage. They look silly and ridiculous. They show that their thinking is no longer capable of conquering more audience. In this case, Alina, we extend cordial gratitude to you. Well, this is why I'm talking about this generation gap. Alina, can you tell us, please, when we talk about interaction in the cyberspace on TikTok with such an immense audience, colossal audience, what is the most complicated thing about it? This is not the audience in front of you now in this physical audience. This is online people. What is the most complicated thing about interacting with them? What makes it interesting, complicated? The thing is, I do not have a 30 million constituency. I am dying from curious. Most likely, the most complicated thing is to retain their attention, to keep them in my orbit. So when you talk about interaction, some people come, some people go. The things you are doing now, how popular are they? When you do something new, how popular is it with them? I interact with the audience directly in the straightforward way. I read their comments, their observations, but I don't always succeed to read all of the comments, not more than 50% of them. Do you respond to the comments? Rarely. Okay. Well, because there are too many comments probably on your TikTok page. It's physically impossible to answer all of them. Yes, it is. So let me draw you an example. You get a comment, you respond to a comment. How is it? Quid pro quo, or then you have a more breathing communication? You know, sometimes we have a very breathing discussions and communications. And what if, when you create a certain content at any platform, when the comments start incoming, when you have a new, fresh thought, likewise all of us, and suddenly you get a comment which is negative, I don't like it, I'm not comfortable, what do you do? Well, the thing is, I play with various formats. I shuffle the formats. Today one format, tomorrow is another format. If today a certain format is not that popular, I might switch over to something new one. But I think very soon I'm supposed to generate a new format. How soon? How soon? We are anticipating your forecasts. How soon? Year, 2 years. When do you anticipate that quantum break? 2, 3, 4 years. Well, in that case, we're going to have to relocate ourselves to TikTok.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me? I've seen you smiling on some of our conversation here. Please bring it on.
Yeah.
I know that you're here. It's not like I didn't left you out of the conversation.
Thank you. I think the thing that I'm most surprised about this conversation is precisely how old everybody is sounding. the reason that TikTok is good, the reason that Alina has 30 million followers or 31 million followers by now, is because TikTok is really good. It's really entertaining, and 10 minutes, an hour spent on TikTok is never wasted. But it's not news. It's not Shakespeare. It's not Tolstoy.
But do we need to compare them?
But that's my point, is that we don't have to compare them.
And we don't have to choose.
I think exactly, we don't have to choose. We can have both. And I think when we talk about media, we run the risk of just saying the young people are doing it wrong because the young people have this other thing that they're doing that we middle-aged people don't understand, and so therefore we're going to discount it. Whereas actually, I think in terms of media consumption and its effect on society, the biggest problem isn't young people watching TikTok, it's old people watching Fox News, or the equivalent of these sort of mainstream media. And yes, those mainstream media outlets have editors and they have fact checkers and they have all of that, but they do more damage socially and epistemologically as regards, facts or the lack of them than a million TikTok creators or YouTube creators or Twitter creators or Vine creators or Instagram or Snapchat or whichever thing that young people are doing that the world blames for the reality, when actually the majority of fault, I think, in the media industry is made up of middle-aged and old people watching mainstream media and just being wrong, compared to young people having fun on TikTok, which I think is something which is fantastic. I'm a big fan. So let's leave the young people out of it and discuss the real problem, which is, channels like Fox News just being massively misleading in an extraordinarily
well, that's what I wanted
way.
to say. Sometimes that's what we mentioned before, that sometimes you don't need to go on the new platforms or social media to be misleading or misinformating somebody. I mean, that happens across all the platforms. You don't really need,
Yeah, exactly, and I think we've seen over the past few years, not just with the pandemic, but with social change. I mean, Black Lives Matter has already been mentioned. That some of the best reporting, some of the best commentary, some of the best explainers of the wider problems have appeared on the new and more modern platforms. And some of the most misleading, some of the most just patently wrong viewpoints have appeared on the mainstream media. So let's not
But as a follow-up question,
confused between truth and age or tradition.
No, for sure. And that's, I definitely, we're going to get the question now. I definitely agree with you with the fact that we do not have to choose between the new social media or the traditional media. Nobody is obliged to make this sacred choice. It's about, I don't know, and it's also, I agree with you about, I definitely would not want to sound anyhow middle-aged or old-fashioned and old-school when it comes to the new media and new platforms. It's fascinating. It's interesting. You don't have to choose between classical and serious and non-serious. Same way as that I'm really applauding and really kind of kudos to all the traditional media who are trying and going into the new platforms, new formats and so on. We kind of quickly introduced, just quick mentioning at Euronews a few years ago, we introduced a totally social media newsroom. That's the team of people dedicated specifically to social media. They cover YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. These are people who know how to find the information, how to turn it into news, how to make news out of it, but also with the full fact-checking process. This is great, and this is super popular in the sense of with the followers and with the new format and so on and so forth. Same goes with Timur for the storytelling. We have documentaries and stories and journalists now. It happens now during pandemic as well. all you need to cover the story or to follow the story in terms of storytelling is your phone. You don't need 3 or 4 cameras quite often anymore, because it changes the format of the storytelling, and then the way it looks, you're totally taking the viewer and the follower with you into the story. Alex, very quickly, and I want to get the questions from the audience, because I can carry on, I think, for hours on that topic.
Just a quick follow-up to Ben's point about media as opposed to platforms. I think that distinction is gone. I think somebody's online reputation is a mix of these. So to say, oh, TikTok is fun, I may agree, I may not agree, but it's not media. I think that distinction is now gone. And somebody's online profile, online reputation is a mix. And then, Sasha, when you do research on a subject, you will read both the Financial Times and TikTok to get the full picture.
Yeah, but I'm encouraging people who would only read the Financial Times to also go on TikTok. That's my encouragement there, because this is when you get the full picture, and nothing to do, I hope nothing to do with my age on that one, but it's really about getting the bigger and the fuller picture, because otherwise, if you don't do that, if you only stick to the Financial Times, I'm a big fan, the Wall Street Journal, go to the big media, you're limiting yourself. And you don't get the fuller picture, and that's your choice to stay there.
This is a very
there is
important
so much
point.
more out there. Okay, let's get the question from the audience. We do have a question there. Hi.
Hi, my name is Anastasia. I'm the editor-in-chief in one of the Kazakhstani media sites, and the last discussion was very interesting. My question is as follows. I represent conventional media. I've worked in mass media my whole life. Certainly, right now, we are trying to transform ourselves. Many conventional media are now on social media. We are trying to engage our audience, but it seems that those measures are not enough. There is some hybrid, but let's consider ourselves a younger generation, all of us, okay? So, all right, but there is a younger generation than you and me. So maybe that younger generation is not interested in the news, and they're not consuming the news that we produce. They are consuming the news from non-professionals. So my question is, what do you think is the future of this professional media? And I'm not talking about entertainment. I'm talking about news, TV news, websites. Will we continue living, or we will go to social media? That's actually a great question. Let's discuss. What happens to the news